There's a funny sequence in the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in which the same line is repeated over and over again. Seems Butch and Sundance have robbed one too many Union Pacific trains. While robbing one, a second one pulls up carrying only one boxcar behind it. The boxcar door opens and a posse of riders leaps out of the train and the chase is on. Believing they can outrun and outfox the posse, the two use every trick in the book to lose their followers. They divide their gang in two, hoping that the posse will follow the other gang members. They run their horses up and down through a creek, hoping the trackers lose both the trail and the scent. And every time they look back and realize the posse is still on their tail, one of them says, "Who are those guys?" They simply cannot believe anyone would be that good in tracking them. That is exactly the same question the disciples ask themselves about Jesus after he calms a storm. Who is that guy? Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Friday, January 20th, 2023. Well, it's been a busy stretch of days for Jesus. He's performed healings, cast out demons, confronted scribes and Pharisees, chosen a dozen followers as his disciples, and taught large crowds of people. Because of the size of the crowds, he teaches them from the deck of a boat just offshore. Such a frenetic pace seems unsustainable. And so with that, they try to escape the crowd by the only way they can, by boat. The Gospel of Mark says, "On that day when evening had come, he said to them, 'Let us go across to the other side.' And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, and they woke him up and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, 'Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?' And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, 'Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" We call it the Sea of Galilee, but it's not really a sea in the classic sense. It is an inland body of fresh water, and it's not even all that big. You can easily see all the way across, no matter where you stand on the shoreline. At its widest, it is roughly 7.5 miles across, and its length from top to bottom is about 13 miles. We would consider it a prime recreational lake, great for fishing, sailing, water skiing, tubing. But there are things about this lake that make it unusual. At an average water level of about 600 feet below sea level, it is the second lowest body of water in the world, second only to the Dead Sea just down the same Jordan River Valley that feeds the Sea of Galilee. Now, that in itself is just an interesting little factoid, but a second and related fact makes this important. The lake is surrounded by hills on either side, with the hills on the east side rising abruptly to some 2,000 feet above sea level. The dynamics of the land and water sometimes creates sudden and wicked storms that appear almost out of nowhere. It would have been scary to have been caught in one of those storms. But that is exactly what happens to Jesus and his disciples. Only a funny thing happens. Not funny, ha-ha, but funny, strange. In spite of the storm, Jesus remains asleep in the stern of the boat, blissfully unaware of the turmoil around him, and not just the turmoil of the wind and waves, but the turmoil in the form of the disciples' panic. And they would know. Several of them made their living fishing these waters. They knew all too well what could happen on these waters. No doubt they had seen friends and maybe even family die in storms on this small lake. If there were ever a time for panic, this was it. But when they wake Jesus up, notice that they have to wake him. He simply speaks to the wind and the sea, rebuking them and commanding them to be calm. When the winds stop and the sea grow calm, he then turns his attention to the disciples themselves, upbraiding them for their apparent lack of faith. And with that, they say to each other, "Who is this guy?" Not, "How did he do this?" but "Who is he?" This is still early in the gospel, and they all have a lot to learn, but Jesus expects that they should already know who he is. They should know that he is the Son of God. Even if they have an inkling of this truth, they still have no way to fully understand it. Turns out, though, they've really asked a most important question. Who is this guy? Who is Jesus? It is a question we all have to ask ourselves, because as it so happens, a lot rides on how we answer this very question. Tomorrow, a lot of begging going on. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.